Welcome to the Unraveling the Scriptures channel. Have you ever wondered what could lead an entire city to be destroyed by fire and brimstone? Or what would motivate Lot's daughters to make the shocking decision to sleep with their own father to ensure the continuation of their lineage? Imagine living in a time when flames descending from the sky were God's response to sin and injustice. In today's video, we will dive into one of the most gripping stories in the Bible, the condemnation of Sodom and Gomorrah. This episode is much more than an ancient tale. It's a powerful lesson about the sins that provoke divine wrath and what that means for us today. Additionally, we'll explore the intriguing consequences and hidden messages revealed by this story. Be sure to like and support us, settle in, and prepare for a fascinating journey through the pages of the Bible. Let's get started with the video. Sodom and Gomorrah, hidden sins and Lot's relationship with his daughters. In the broad panorama of the Scriptures, the account of the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah is one of the most intriguing and revealing, offering a fascinating glimpse into ancient life in the Middle East. Located in the fertile plain of the Jordan, these cities were not only geographical landmarks, but also symbols of prosperity and wealth. The contrast between the arid desert and the vibrant cities highlights the beauty and abundance of Sodom and Gomorrah, which thrived under God's protection and blessing. The book of Genesis tells us that the land of Egypt was like the garden of the Lord before the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, emphasizing the grandeur of the region where these cities flourished. However, this prosperity was not just a reflection of the land's fertility, but also of the inhabitants' skill in managing their resources competently. Sodom and Gomorrah were known for their wealth and ostentation, rivaling any major metropolis of the time. They were places where life seemed to be a feast of abundance, a true earthly paradise. Yet, behind the facade of luxury and well-being, there were tensions and conflicts that would come to light as the story unfolded. While they stood out for their opulence, it was essential to understand the historical and geographical context that shaped these societies. Situated near what is now the Dead Sea, these cities were in a region that offered all the conditions for economic and cultural flourishing. However, as the story unfolds, we see that this same prosperity became a stage for significant moral decline. The Bible states that the men of Sodom were wicked and sinners against the Lord, Genesis 13:13, setting the stage for the drama to come. God had blessed these cities with abundant resources, but as the morality of the inhabitants declined, the relationship between prosperity and righteousness became increasingly complicated. The Scriptures make it clear that, despite the abundance, there was a growing departure from divine principles, which was about to trigger events of great magnitude. It is at this point that we begin to understand the true consequences of moral decline and the urgent need to reflect on the values that uphold justice and holiness. These cities, once shining with prosperity and wealth, were steeped in practices that shocked not only their contemporaries, but also followers of God throughout history. The prophet Ezekiel describes the state of Sodom poignantly. "Behold, this was the iniquity of your sister Sodom. Pride, fullness of food, and abundance of idleness were in her and her daughters. Neither did she strengthen the hand of the poor and needy." Ezekiel 16:49. The list of sins includes a lack of compassion and justice, characteristics that could not go unpunished before God. The Bible reveals that arrogance and a lack of solidarity were trademarks of Sodom and Gomorrah. The book of Jude reinforces this view, mentioning that these cities suffer the punishment of eternal fire, as an example to those who live in impurity, Jude 1:7. Among the most notable sins was pride, a form of arrogance manifested in the opulence and indifference of the inhabitants. Gluttony and idleness completed the picture, as the abundance of resources led to an excessive lifestyle and neglect of the basic needs of others. Thus, Sodom and Gomorrah became symbols of moral decay and a departure from divine principles, illustrating the dangerous trajectory of a society that, despite its material wealth, was lost in arrogance and a lack of compassion. The biblical account serves as a timeless warning to reflect on the values that uphold justice and humanity. The inhabitants of Sodom and Gomorrah indulged in a life of pleasures without concern for the consequences of their actions on the less fortunate. This combination of sins highlighted a severe lack of empathy and justice, fundamental pillars for a fair and balanced society. Equally alarming was the injustice that pervaded daily life in these cities. The Bible reveals that the absence of compassion and disregard for the needy were common. They did not hand out to the afflicted and needy, as described by Ezekiel. This failure to promote justice and solidarity created an environment where sin thrived unchecked, setting the stage for the severe judgment that was to come. As we delve deeper into the sins of Sodom and Gomorrah, it becomes impossible to ignore the depth of corruption that overtook these cities. The transgression of divine norms and the lack of repentance culminated in an inevitable fate. The judgment of Sodom and Gomorrah is one of the Bible's most dramatic and impactful stories, exemplifying God's response to rampant sin. The narrative begins with the intervention of angels sent by God to investigate the situation in the cities. In Genesis, we read that 2 angels arrived in Sodom in the evening and were welcomed by Lot, who received them into his home with hospitality despite the evident risks. Genesis 19:1. Lot, Abraham's nephew, plays a significant role in this biblical narrative. The son of Haran, Abraham's brother, Lot, was taken in by his uncle after his father's death. Known for his faith and obedience to God, Abraham took on the responsibility of caring for Lot, and their relationship became a crucial partnership in their journeys. The Bible presents Lot as a man of character, but one who was about to embark on a journey filled with challenging and dangerous choices. As Abraham and Lot prospered, expanding their possessions and flocks, the land began to prove insufficient to support both of them. This impasse led to a friendly separation, with Abraham showing remarkable generosity by offering Lot the first choice of available lands. His attitude reflected a deep trust in God. Observing the lushness of the lands around the Jordan River, Lot chose to settle in the plain that encompassed the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. Lot's decision seemed logical from a material standpoint, drawn by the prosperity and wealth of the region. However, the Bible reveals that these cities were notoriously known for their immorality and sin. By settling in Sodom, Lot not only became a resident of the city, but also took on a position of local leadership, sitting at the city gate, a sign of respect and influence. Although Lot's choice was attractive in terms of wealth, it placed him in a complex and dangerous position, on the brink of an impending catastrophe. However, this proximity to sin and injustice brought immense spiritual and moral challenges. Lot's life in Sodom became a stage for increasing tension between material prosperity and moral deterioration. Lot's presence in the city did little to prevent the prevalence of corruption and wickedness. Instead, it placed him in a desperate position, calling out for divine intervention. This critical scenario was one of the reasons Lot was chosen by God to receive the 2 angels who arrived in Sodom. The arrival of these messengers marked the beginning of a series of events that would lead to divine judgment. The situation quickly took a dark turn when the men of Sodom surrounded Lot's house, demanding that he hand over the visitors so they could know them, as described in Genesis 19:5. This act of depravity and violence is a clear indication of the moral corruption that had overtaken the city. In a desperate effort to protect the angels, Lot offers his own daughters in exchange, revealing how severely his morality was being challenged. However, the angels intervene, striking the aggressors with blindness and preventing them from achieving their aims. The next step in the divine judgment is the impending destruction of the cities. The angels inform Lot of God's plan to devastate Sodom and Gomorrah and warn him to escape with his family. In an act of mercy, the angels command Lot, "Escape for your life. Do not look back or stop anywhere in the plain. Escape to the mountains, lest you be swept away." Genesis 19:17. The insistence on fleeing and the command not to look back highlight the severity of the situation and the urgent need to escape divine judgment. After the angel's warning, Lot hesitates to leave the city. Genesis 19:16 describes, "But he lingered." This indicates that despite the urgency of the situation, Lot did not immediately follow the angel's instructions. His hesitation reveals the difficulty of breaking away from the familiar environment and the resistance to fully accept the impending disaster. Lot's hesitation can be seen as a reflection of the difficulty in abandoning the city and the life he knew, as well as a possible lack of complete understanding of the gravity of the situation. Noting his hesitation, the angels, in an act of mercy, directly intervened to ensure his escape. The biblical text describes, "So the men seized his hand and the hand of his wife and the hands of his 2 daughters, for the compassion of the Lord was upon him, and they brought him out and set him outside the city." Genesis 19:16. This gesture underscores divine compassion and direct assistance to ensure that Lot and his family were saved, even in the face of their hesitation. As Lot and his daughters followed the instructions and fled to the city of Zoar, his wife disobeyed the divine command and looked back. This disobedience to what seemed like a simple but crucial instruction resulted in a terrible transformation. The Bible reports that Lot's wife looked back and became a pillar of salt, Genesis 19:26. This transformation into salt symbolizes condemnation and the permanence of God's judgment on Sodom and Gomorrah, reflecting the seriousness of not fully and obediently following divine instructions. The destruction of the cities was a cataclysmic event, characterized by fire and brimstone as promised by God. The Bible recounts that the Lord rained sulfur and fire on Sodom and Gomorrah from the heavens, as described in Genesis 19:24. This fire not only consumed the cities, but also served as a clear sign of divine wrath against wickedness. The total devastation of the cities was an act of justice and a warning to future generations about the consequences of sin. This event not only marked the end of Sodom and Gomorrah, but also set the stage for reflection on God's justice and holiness. The severe judgment of these cities demonstrates that God does not tolerate moral corruption and injustice. The Lord declared, "Because the outcry against her has grown great, and her sin is very grave." Genesis 18:20. This statement highlights the seriousness of the sins committed by the cities and the divine commitment to justice. In His holiness, God cannot ignore the transgression of the principles He Himself established. One of the most striking lessons is the importance of the salvation of the righteous and obedience to God's will. Lot and his family were rescued from destruction due to Lot's righteousness and adherence to the divine warning. Lot left with his 2 daughters and his wife, Genesis 19:15. This act of mercy towards the righteous highlights God's faithfulness in protecting those who follow His ways, even amid severe judgment on the surrounding wickedness. Additionally, the story emphasizes the need to detach oneself from the world and its temptations. The command to Lot not to look back symbolizes abandoning old practices and distancing oneself from corrupt influences. "Do not look back," says the Lord, a clear instruction to not cling to the old practices and habits that led to the city's destruction. This detachment is crucial for living according to God's will and avoiding the same mistakes that led to the downfall of Sodom and Gomorrah. The destruction of these cities serves as a constant reminder that God's justice and holiness should not be underestimated. The Bible makes it clear that sin has inevitable consequences and that divine justice is infallible. The lessons drawn from the fate of Sodom and Gomorrah are a call to personal reflection and action in accordance with divine principles. The story of Sodom and Gomorrah is not just a tale from the past, but a guide for living a life that honors God and rejects injustice. Lot, by choosing to reside in Sodom, made a decision that reflected his pursuit of comfort and prosperity, but also exposed him to the consequences of the rampant sin in that city. Lot's decision to remain in Sodom, despite the clear signs of moral decay, ultimately placed him in a critical position when destruction became imminent. The story also illustrates how our choices can impact not only our own lives, but also those around us. Lot's decisions and the subsequent tragedy had a profound effect on his family and his own life, serving as a reminder that our actions have far-reaching ramifications. Seeking divine guidance in all our decisions is crucial to avoid mistakes that can lead to severe consequences. After fleeing Sodom and Gomorrah, Lot and his family faced an uncertain and challenging path. They took refuge in Zoar, a small town nearby, as the angels had instructed. Although Zoar was a safer option than the surrounding regions, the fear of impending destruction still loomed over them. Even with this temporary safety, Lot and his daughter's lives would not be easy. The Bible shows us that, after some time, Lot and his family moved from the neighboring towns to live in the mountains, fearing to stay in Zoar. This decision was motivated by the persistent fear of God's judgment and the need to find a new home in a safer environment. In their new mountainous location, Lot's life became marked by isolation and difficulties. He and his daughters faced a situation of great vulnerability. The shift to a simpler and more isolated life brought survival challenges and the need to adapt to a new way of living. Although the Bible does not provide many details about this phase, it is evident that the family faced deprivation and hardships while trying to rebuild their lives away from the civilization they had known. The situation worsened when Lot's daughters, feeling helpless and with no prospect of a future, made a drastic decision. Believing themselves to be the last survivors of humanity, they decided to ensure the continuation of their father's lineage. In a controversial episode, Lot's daughters got him drunk and had relations with him, resulting in the birth of 2 sons, Moab and Ammon. These sons became the ancestors of the Moabite and Ammonite nations, respectively. This account, found in Genesis 19:30-38, illustrates the difficult circumstances and desperate decisions made by Lot's family in a time of crisis. The trajectory of Lot and his family after leaving Sodom serves as a powerful reminder of the consequences of the choices made throughout life. The drastic change in their lifestyle and the adversities faced reflect the complexities of existence and the importance of faithfully following God's guidance. As we explore these lessons, we begin to understand the need to seek divine will in our own lives and how it can influence our destiny. Just as Lot was instructed not to look back and to seek safety, we are today called to keep our eyes fixed on Christ and not be seduced by the temptations of the world. The Bible warns us, "Watch therefore, for you do not know what hour your Lord is coming." Matthew 24:42. If you've read this far, please like and share with friends and family. May God bless you, and see you soon.